There is a silent pain that few people know how to explain. The pain of realizing that you were always there for everyone, yet very few people truly valued your presence. You help, listen, support, reply quickly, care deeply, make efforts, try to keep relationships alive, and still feel taken for granted, as if your dedication is simply expected, as if your presence carries no weight. And the most painful part is that many people only realize your value once you step away, once you stop insisting, once silence takes the place of your constant availability, because there is a difficult truth most people avoid accepting. The problem with always being present is that people begin to believe you will never leave. Maybe without realizing it, you taught people to ignore you, not because you lack value, but because you were available all the time. And what is constantly available rarely feels rare. Stoicism teaches something deeply liberating. You do not need to beg for recognition to prove your worth. You do not need to emotionally exhaust yourself, trying to make others realize your importance, because people who truly value your presence do not need to lose you in order to see what they had. Seneca wrote, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." And many people live exactly like that. They suffer trying to maintain unbalanced relationships. They suffer trying to please those who never show reciprocity. They suffer trying to become indispensable to people who already became comfortable receiving them without effort. There is a huge difference between loving someone and abandoning yourself while trying to be loved. And this is exactly where many people slowly lose their own value without noticing. Because the more you live seeking emotional validation, the more your peace depends on the behavior of others. Today, you are going to understand why most people only value what they lose. And more importantly, how to recover your emotional dignity before your entire life begins revolving around the desperate need to be recognized. Attitude 1. Stop always being available. This may be one of the hardest truths to accept, but what is always available eventually stops feeling special. Think about air. You only notice its importance when it is missing. Think about light. While it is constantly on, almost nobody notices it. But the moment it disappears, everyone immediately feels the difference. Many people live exactly like this. They are so present, so available, so accessible all the time, that they become emotionally invisible, not because they lack value, but because others became used to their constant presence. You always reply, always say yes, always help, always try to understand, always forgive, always chase after people. And little by little, without realizing it, you teach others that they can access your energy whenever they want, without needing to value it. Marcus Aurelius said that the wise man should preserve his tranquility above the need to please others. Notice how profound that is, because many times excessive availability does not come from love. It comes from fear of disappointing others, fear of being forgotten, fear of losing connection. And when you live this way, you slowly abandon your own limits just to remain present in other people's lives. The problem is that people who never feel your absence rarely recognize your importance. Imagine a song playing non-stop all day long. After some time, your mind stops noticing it. It becomes background noise. Many people are becoming background noise in other people's lives because they never allow their absence to be felt. That does not mean playing emotional games. It does not mean manipulation. It simply means recovering balance. It means understanding that your emotional energy also deserves space, silence, and protection. You do not need to be available all the time to prove love, loyalty, or worth. Emotionally mature people understand this. They know how to respect boundaries. They know how to value presence without needing the threat of loss. But people who never learn to value you may only wake up once they realize you are no longer there in the same way. And there is something even more dangerous than always being available, turning your entire life into a desperate attempt to become indispensable to everyone. Attitude 2. Stop trying to be indispensable to everyone. Many people live exhausted not because they work too much, but because emotionally they try to carry the entire world on their shoulders. They want to solve everything, want to be there for everyone, want to feel needed all the time. And deep down, there is often a silent emotional need behind this behavior, the need to feel important. But there is a hidden emotional trap in this. The more you try to become indispensable to everyone, the more you begin forgetting yourself. Your peace starts depending on messages, attention, recognition, replies, and validation. Epictetus taught that whoever depends too much on the opinions of others hands their freedom over to them, and that is exactly what happens when your happiness depends on constantly being valued. You begin accepting emotional crumbs simply to avoid losing space in people's lives. You begin making excessive efforts to maintain connections that should naturally be reciprocal, and slowly, you become emotionally drained. It is like a fountain trying to provide water for everyone around it without ever stopping to refill itself. At first it looks like strength, then it becomes exhaustion, then emptiness. Many good people are emotionally tired because they spend their entire lives trying to be enough for others, while nobody ever asks if they are okay too. And the saddest part is that constant effort rarely creates true appreciation, because people who receive everything effortlessly eventually start believing it is an obligation instead of a gift. People who try too hard to be loved eventually accept emotional crumbs as proof of affection, and little by little, this destroys self-worth, because you begin believing you must earn attention through constant sacrifice. Seneca said, "He who depends too much on approval becomes a slave to other people's perception." And perhaps this is one of the greatest liberations of emotional maturity, realizing that you were not born to constantly convince everyone of your worth. You were not born to live exhausted, trying to earn a place in the lives of people who simply became comfortable with your dedication. In the middle of the emotional chaos of the world, protecting your peace has become an act of wisdom. So subscribe now to the channel Stoic Spring, because the more you strengthen your mind, the more you learn to value yourself without depending on the validation of others, and that completely changes the way you live. There is something curious about human relationships. Most people only realize the value of water when they feel thirsty, only realize the value of silence when noise disappears, and only realize the value of your presence once it is no longer available in the same way. And ironically, it is when you stop chasing people that some finally realize how much you were doing for them. Attitude 3. Your absence reveals who truly cared. Absence has a power that constant presence sometimes loses, because silence creates clarity. It removes distractions, removes comfort, removes the automatic access many people had to your energy. While you are always there, some people live emotionally on autopilot. They assume you will continue being available, continue replying, continue insisting, continue tolerating everything. But when your presence changes, something changes inside them too. It is like entering a house that has always been filled with a certain light. While the light is always on, nobody notices it. But the moment it goes dark, the emptiness is immediately felt. Absence reveals everything. It reveals who truly valued your importance, reveals who only enjoyed the convenience of your presence, reveals who genuinely cared, and who simply became accustomed to receiving your attention. Marcus Aurelius taught that we should observe people not by what they say, but by what they consistently demonstrate. And this is essential, because many people claim to care about you, yet only seek you when they need something. They only remember your existence when they miss what you used to provide. There is a difference between missing a person and missing the benefits that person used to offer. And emotional maturity allows you to recognize that difference clearly. Some people only wake up when silence replaces your presence, only realize your efforts when nobody else fills that space the same way you did. And although this hurts, it also brings freedom, because you finally understand who truly valued you and who only valued easy access to your energy. Imagine an empty chair inside a silent room. Sometimes absence communicates more than 1,000 words. It reveals the weight someone carried within that environment. It reveals the difference their presence made. And perhaps that is exactly why some people never appreciate what they have while they still have it. Constant presence creates the illusion of permanence. They believe you will always remain there, always available, always understanding, always willing to endure everything. But eventually the soul becomes tired of being ignored, tired of giving too much without reciprocity, tired of begging for recognition through endless effort. And when that moment arrives, something silently changes inside you. You stop insisting, stop chasing, stop trying to occupy a space where you were never truly valued. And there is one final truth that almost nobody accepts about appreciation. Sometimes the reason some people never valued you is because you never stepped away long enough for them to truly feel your absence. You remained available even when emotionally wounded. Continued being present even while neglected. Continued giving energy even after becoming empty inside. But Stoicism teaches that dignity also means knowing when to step back, knowing when to protect your peace, knowing when to interrupt cycles of emotional exhaustion before they destroy your self-worth. You do not need to beg to be valued. You do not need to convince anyone of your importance. People who genuinely care demonstrate it. They demonstrate it through respect, through reciprocity, through sincere presence, because people who truly value you do not wait to lose you before realizing your importance. So if today you feel ignored, emotionally neglected, or taken for granted, remember this: your presence has value, your energy has value, your attention has value, but perhaps you need to stop giving them without limits to people who never learn to appreciate them. Take a deep breath, protect your dignity, learn to walk away from what drains your peace, and understand that your absence also communicates. Sometimes the silence of your absence teaches the value that your constant dedication never could. And if this video spoke to you, subscribe now to the channel Stoic Spring. Because when you build the habit of strengthening your inner peace, your life changes. You learn to respect yourself more, depend less on external validation, and develop an emotional maturity that completely transforms the way you live. In the end, true peace begins the moment you realize you no longer need to constantly sacrifice yourself in order to deserve appreciation.